and we are live. Episode 7 today, Saucy, because we have the special episode 6 with Candace Owens coming out actually in 42 minutes, my friend. 42 minutes, which will be well in the past by the time this comes out. But today, 1 week from the election, very exciting stuff. The momentum is overwhelming in favour of Trumpy. We're going to cover that along with the decision to block Candace Owens' visa here in Australia. I'll touch on that, and I'll elaborate on some of the investigations that I'm going to be doing over the next week into that. Saucy's going to update us on some of the desperate Dems attacks. We're going to go into Rogan's podcast with Trumpy, Saucy Sips, and we're going to cover the markets as well. Bitcoin all-time high, a bit of uranium chat, and what Google, Amazon, and Microsoft have been doing with their nuclear power plants to fuel their future within the AI sphere. So, jam-packed show, exciting, positive this week, Saucy, a lot more positive than last week. So let's dive in. We'll start with a little political update from you and your thoughts, and then we can go into the main agenda items.
Thank you, Natho. Great to be here. Episode 7. Cannot wait for the Candace Owens interview to go live. I must concede I did get a little preview, and it is a must-watch. Riveting viewing, Natho. Expert interviewing skills from you, and I thought Candace was terrific. She came across really genuine, very intelligent, very well considered, and we'll obviously get deep into that now, Natho, before a political update. I was just keen to get your thoughts on, first of all, how it went, how you were feeling. Quite a big one, a momentous occasion. So how was the experience of interviewing Candace Owens?
Yeah, very, very nerve-wracking, but good. Not like crazy, but not like Alex Jones. The thing that was good about this was I was in control. I could interview. We tried to schedule it a few times, but it all sort of fell through. But in the end, it worked out quite nicely. We had a good short but compact window of sort of 20 minutes. So I hope you guys enjoy that. But as an experience goes, it was really good. She's a lovely lady. It was nice to be the one that didn't have to talk as much and just sit back and absorb what she had to say. But above all, I think the key takeaway for me was that it was really encouraging to hear that, much like us, she's a eternal optimist. She's fully bought into the public consciousness. She thinks things are turning, the tide is turning, good is winning, and it was good to hear that, reassuring to hear that from someone that's over there and really under the magnifying glass every week, and being ridiculed every week. So it was good. It's a great chat, lovely lady. Just a damn shame that, well, who knows? We don't know. We might be able to see her. I haven't heard an official update from her yet or her team. I don't know if it's even possible that she can appeal or contest what's happened, but I certainly hope it is possible, because I'd love to see her up in Brisbane if she does get to do the tour. But it's really good, mate.
Yes. We'll have a few choice words, I'm sure, in just a few minutes. But just a follow-on question. I think what struck me from watching the interview, and I'm sure for anyone listening to this, they'll also have listened by then to this interview that we're speaking of. But what struck me was that word. It was the positivity, Nath. I thought it was just a really... It was quite an empowering conversation. It was very uplifting. And that's not what I think the world would expect, given the hysteria and constant criticism that she in particular is subject to. And she's seen as this hostile, kind of angry, every word under the sun. And unfortunately, it's very sad that these allegations have festered into, certainly the mainstream opinion, certainly government fear mongering. They've gotten on top of this and clearly turned it very ugly. But Nath, just one more follow up question before we do get into the government's decision. Were you surprised by the Candace Owens you saw? The positive, really friendly, quite brilliant and articulate. Was that a surprise to you at all, or was that exactly the Candace you were expecting?
No, I think it was what I was expecting. I mean, it's hard always to, like, for full transparency for the listeners. I mean, I'm not that well versed or experienced in doing interviews. I don't have a journalistic / media background. It's all just manifested out of nowhere the last couple of years. So I'm always, in real life, a big proponent of building rapport, building trust, and then in your dialogues, in terms of getting the most out of someone from an emotional level and a verbal articulation level, it takes time to build that. We talk about that a lot together, and it's always nervy knowing how much you'll get out of someone. I was never worried that she would be, I guess, dogmatic or standoffish or a little bit guarded. But you always want to be able to get the best out of the time that you've got, given that it was a very short amount of time as well. And I thought she was exceptional. She really did. What did surprise me was the fact that she softened after the intro, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that allowed her just to freewheel and give much more elaborate answers to my questions, which is what my ultimate hope was. But in future, when I get more opportunities like this, I'd love to be able to make it a bit more conversational based. And ideally, I would have liked to have met or had some sort of informal conversation with them prior, so that they're even more relaxed and even more softened. But yeah, that's probably a long way to answer your question. But that's how I felt. I never thought it was going to be difficult or guarded.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and again, I think the vibe was really good. The chemistry was really strong. I thought it was very smiley and happy, and just a lovely 20 minutes. So get yourself a peanut butter and jam on toast. Make yourself a coffee and get viewing. It's a cracking 20. Natho, the natural follow up. Now we'll try to keep this MA rather than R rated. But Tony Burke and Albanese, in their infinite wisdom, have decided to seemingly, I don't know what the appeals process looks like, but cancel Candace Owens' visa into Australia, which, just a bit of background in case you've been living under a rock, it's really it's a landmark decision, and it is a huge, huge statement in the whole censorship movement and the movement away from free speech, the right to free speech, freedom of expression, freedom of thought. So Candace Owens doesn't have even the slightest shred of a criminal record. In fact, she's a remarkable person in her own right. She just happens to be opinionated. Now, again, she thinks things through. She doesn't just spew hate speech without giving things thought. She doesn't, I would argue, spew hate speech at all. It's just some of her opinions do offend because she's not afraid to express what she has to say. So, Nath, the natural question I have to you is, what are your thoughts on the decision? And what do you think the repercussions of this decision will be for Australian democracy and free speech?
I'll be delicate with my words. I'll try to
Very
be.
good.
But this isn't an Albanese or Tony Burke thing. First and foremost, we'll talk about the glaringly obvious hypocrisy in the decision, which everyone can agree on, which is that you could name a litany of rap stars, fucking performers that have criminal records from the US and from abroad globally that have been granted certain exemptions and special visas to get in here to perform. Performers, mind you, that also spit vitriol and disgusting lyrics at time that hide behind the face of art. And that to me, I've never really blown up about that. You know, we've got pretty strict immigration here, and we've got strict visa policies. I'm not too outspoken about those things, but when you bend the rules for them, and then you're not going to let a legitimate person in, it's really just operating well and truly under the binds of the law within her country. Clearly, our country have twisted the laws around. It's not free speech because we don't have free speech, and we'll get into that in a second. But twisting the laws around, I guess, the right to political activism and political speech, which we do. We do have laws that protect people here under that notion. So we can all agree on that. I think you'd have to be severely, you fill in the blanks to to not agree with that. So the hypocrisy point's the big one, but then the more sinister aspect to this, which really is upsetting and disturbing, is the clear power that the Zionist Federation has within this country, and key figures within that movement, which I won't name names on here, but I will. I'm doing a special piece on this as we speak. I've been piecing it together for a while, but now that this has happened, I'm probably going to accelerate it and maybe have it out later this week, maybe not. It'll either be later this week or early next week, where I will show the names. And these certain figures are definitely responsible for this decision, because ultimately they are hell-bent on protecting the integrity of the whole Zionist narrative. Now, important to delineate, I just want to be crystal clear here. I'm not attacking Jewish people or the Jewish community. I'm not attacking Zionists for that matter. I'm just merely highlighting, and will highlight in granularity, the connections between these certain figures and these organizations in the decision making of this, because obviously she was lambasted in the media a few months ago for her attacks on certain Jewish narratives and Jewish history, and they were saying she's a Holocaust denier, which is just blatantly not true. You can actually go and do your own research, and you'll see that that is not true at all. And then, of course, her attacks on Rabbi Menachem Schneerson is his name, and he's passed away, but his doctrine still reverberates through the Zionist communities, and she merely pointed out his doctrine and what he taught, and what Bibi Netanyahu used to admire him and love him, and then these other rabbis, Rabbi Shmuley, like it was just, she was merely just pointing out facts. So look, that's what she got hammered for, and I think that's exactly why they didn't let her in, because their label of what was it was civil discourse. What was that?
May well have been one of those labels.
Yeah, one of those labels. It would incite civil discourse.
That's right. I think that's right.
Yeah. Now, important just to, before I finish on this point and get your thoughts, just to a little capstone on this point. We're now seeing in the Western world as well huge Jewish protests against the administration that's currently in Israel for the overreach within Palestine. And not just domestically in Israel, but abroad. there's clearly a disconnect between what the Jewish community want or see is appropriate and what the elites within that community want. That's all I'll say on that point. So I just think Candace has been bundled into being anti-Semitic completely unjustly. Her arguments have been pretty sound on that notion. Go listen to her on Piers Morgan when she debates Rabbi Shmuley. I think you'll see very clearly that she's not an anti-Semite. So, look, that's all I'll say on that point. It's extremely disappointing, and I think it's clear who's responsible for blocking her visa.
Yeah, well navigated, Nathan. But I think one thing I'll just add there is that's not just a wild stab. I think it is very heavily speculated and even reported that two groups in particular largely were lobbying for her visa to be cancelled. Again, I'm not necessarily having a go at those parties that perhaps are a bit sensitive and concerned, being the trans organizations and, of course, the Jewish lobbyist groups. But anyway, I just think the result sets a really, really dangerous precedent for the country. And, you know, I think intent sometimes, I completely understand intent. And particularly, I do have great sympathy for the Jewish groups, and you know, given what's played out in history, they have every right to be concerned by any small or large threat. I understand the sensitivities there. I also agree with your point, Nath. They did a survey on Netanyahu's popularity and the Jewish population that agrees and disagrees. Obviously not a huge sample size, but it certainly was far from unanimous. So clearly there are many Jewish people that aren't fully supportive of the war or the scale of war that's being waged. But that's another point. Maybe that might be a topic we tackle at another time. But the point I want to make on this, Nath, is the backbone of our government, pathetic backbone of the likes of Burke and Albanese, because ultimately, you know, I know they're not perhaps the drivers, but they are responsible for the decision. And I just think it reeks of hypocrisy. And I think it's a terrible look for this country. Bear in mind, we'll segue into US politics now, because bear in mind, Candace Owens has a strong relationship with Donald J. Trump. And I could see a conversation playing out between the two, painting Australia in, quite rightly, for this act, a very negative light. And of course, given Rudd's comments not so long ago, given the terrible things Malcolm Turnbull has said about President Trump, given the terrible media coverage President Trump receives here in Australia, of course, just buying into all the far left liberal media rubbish, I could see a relationship, you know, having to be rebuilt, and that's never a position you want with our strongest allies. So I think we're digging ourselves a hole, Natho. What do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think your point around the precedence and the lack of backbone is yeah, very, very important. And I look, we're often solution orientated. You and I don't know the solution to this one, mate. Because even as you said, what's going to happen with the relationship between Albo and? Do you reckon Trumpy's going to be chewing at the bit to meet Albo? Well, they probably will have to, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just no, it's not good. And more at a specific level, it illuminates the fact that we really don't have. Again, we don't have, and I want to get this. This needs to be clear because I get heaps of comments on my Instagram post saying, "But we all have free speech. We all have free speech in Australia. We're the same as US." No, we don't. We don't have constitutional protection. We do not. We never have. We probably never will. It's not there. Go read the Constitution. You have loosely freedom of expression, and you do have some political protections. If you're a political commentator, you have protections there, which is why this thing's a little bit contradictory. But I don't know. Does she fall under that if she's a journo? I'm not sure. I don't know how that works. But you need to be really crystal clear on your rights, because we don't have the same rights as people in the US, and everywhere else in the world also have different rights. And that's what's super alarming, is because now we're starting to see the big censorship wagon roll out, and those points are being elucidated, and you need to be across it, and you need to stand up for these discrepancies, or at least, if it keeps getting worse, demand clarity on the minuscule points that we do have around freedom of expression. Or what does it look like online? Like, they've flung through all the Online Safety Act stuff. They're trying to fling through the misinformation bill. They're trying to take rights away left, right, and center to make the waters even more murky. And that's the key point. Is, again, we have this person who should be here expressing herself and can't now, seemingly. And it's another precedent that is illuminating a very dark problem that we're all facing. So just be wary of that. And everyone, I urge you, go just understand what you can and can't do, because it's not what you think.
Well, Nath, that's a good point. I'm conscious we will dive into US politics in just a second, but a reaction to that point is, I think what you're raising might become a very topical issue in Australian political public forum very quickly, is actually what are our free speech rights in this country. And I think if Dutton were to get in, there would be an argument. If the public consciousness kept rising on this particular topic, there would be an argument for Dutton to push hard for a constitutional change to recognise broader and more clear free speech rights for Australian people. I really think a referendum on this topic, if it gains some sort of momentum, and if people realise that they don't have as much rights to free speech as they perhaps would like, which I'm sure they would realise if they did their research, I suspect this could become a big issue. So I'm sure you'll keep hammering away at this. But as we always say, I think we can have hope that good will prevail, and hopefully common sense will prevail in alignment with that good. Speaking of which, perfect segue, good versus evil, common sense prevailing. Let's talk US politics, my friend. There's 1 week to go.
Yes, indeed.
And I'll give my quick assessment and sentiment on the current state of the race. The state of the race with 1 week to go. My general sentiment and analysis, Natho, is quite similar to that of the previous fortnight. I think now there are a couple of hesitations, and I think this might be last week jitters, if I'm being honest, but I'm getting a little bit shook or rattled by some outlier polls. That's one thing.
Oh, no, not the polls, mate.
I'm getting a little bit shook and rattled by this absolute last-ditch desperation hit piece in concert with the Democrat Party from the media. All the fake news are really going hard as they can. And I'm confident, and the data would tell you that Trump is a 2 out of 3, so a 66% chance of winning the election. And again, I do think that is right, Natho. I think it could be as high as 75 or 80, if I'm honest, looking at all the data points.
It should be.
But I just hesitate a little bit, because the Democrats are playing their little games, Nath. They don't have any substance, and we'll get into this now. So their last week of campaigning surely goes down as one of the darkest and most devious campaigns in political history. So last week on here, we were talking about the rancid hypocrisy and double standards of calling Trump mentally unfit for office, which is laughable, as we know, given their history of cover-ups. But this week, Nath, and I'm actually really sad to say this. There's no satisfaction in me saying what I'm about to say, but this week they've reverted to and stooped to the incredible low of calling Trump Hitler or invoking the spirit of Hitler or whatever absolutely preposterous, disgusting, and deplorable comments they've made and constantly repeated in that vein. It is absolutely abhorrent. It has no place in society. It is incitement of violence. There is absolutely no doubt that this type of commentary and rhetoric contributes to the minds of those that go off and do crazy things like the 2 assassination attempts we've seen on Donald Trump's life in this cycle. There has to be a time where the Democrat Party and their media allies put their hand up and concede that the relentless attacks and the vicious, vicious discourse in which they are conveying these attacks is in part responsible for society's very, very delicate current balance and the severe tensions that exist. Now, of course, they level the accusations the other way, but my argument, Nath, has always been that Trump, the Republican Party, the conservative movement, MAGA, whatever you want to call them, are a constant reaction to the far left lunacy and the far left labeling and the woke hysteria. So, Nath, that's my rant. And the Democrats have stooped to an incredible low this week. The fascism claims, which obviously are baseless and unsubstantiated garbage. It's disgusting and deplorable. Do you have anything to add?
I do, mate. Yeah, and I think it's one of the highlights of the just. There's a one of the quotes from Candace in the interview wraps that sentiment that you've expressed up in a nice little package. It's one of my favourite quotes I've heard of the year, and the title of the interview with her: "The deep state are squealing, dying animal. That's what they do. When an animal is dying, they squeal their last breaths, and that's why the vitriol and the animosity and the baseless claims, the clear lies are at its complete peak, because they are a dying, filthy, disgusting animal. And that's not just the people involved. That's the whole conglomerate, media itself. It is dying. Media is dying. They're never going to apologize. They're never going to take responsibility. They're dying. These Candace, Tucker, Alex Jones, they all shit on CNN viewership, MSNBC. They're all dead in the water, unless they get gutted like a dead animal and completely rebranded, remade, new life injected in this new wave of unconventional backdoor media. They're dead, mate. They're dying. And to wrap that point up, sadly, as I have predicted, and as Jonesy talks about, they are preparing for false flag events, blaming civil unrest on Trumpy. It's reported today. Jonesy's just done a big piece on it. Again, this is this squealing animal that they're throwing the toys out of the cot, and they're just toing and froing because they don't know what to do. And their last ditch will be this civil unrest thing that I don't think anyone's really going to buy. They're going to try and frame riots, maybe even film. Like, that's not off the cards. Like, they could film it. It could be anything. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it is definitely being reported. You can go check that out for yourself after this if you want. There is clear reports of this being prepared, because they'll delay the results of the election. They're not going to just have it done within a day. It'll take probably more than a few days in certain states. They'll stall and stall and stall. I'm pretty confident of that because we can already see a mountain of evidence suggesting that there's voter fraud again, and there is also going to be those delayed results in certain states. So
yeah, unfortunately, those stories keep popping up.
yeah, they do.
Democrat officials or people pretending to be officials stopping Republicans from lining
Yeah,
up in
yeah,
early voting queues, and of course, the regular stories about mail-in ballots
yeah.
being illegally dropped off or fraudulent. So it's a pity, and their system's always going to have
Yeah.
these stories, unfortunately.
But ultimately, I'm in a much better mind frame this week. I think, as you said at the top, the good is winning. It's an absolute monsoon. They can't stop it. It's a
Well,
monsoon. It's probably
yeah,
80-20, mate. It's like it's done. They're panicking, they're squealing, they're dying. It's all just folding and falling, and it's great to see. And I just hope they don't fucking bring us down with the sinking ship. They probably won't be able to do that. And yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting few weeks, but that's my sentiments.
yeah, I like it, Nathan, and I agree mostly with that general overview. Let's talk about the positives. Let's get positive. It's been a little dark and depressing for the last 20. So I want to talk about the McDonald's campaign that Trump did. I thought it was an iconic moment in political campaigning history. Did you watch that clip? There was a terrific 20-minute clip of all the highlights. Him working the fries machine, him handing out the bags to customers, and it may well have been partially staged, but that's what political campaigning is to all those lefty hacks that want to have a dig. It was fantastic. It was great entertainment, and ultimately, calling out Kamala for lying about working at Macca's, allegedly. There's no proof she ever worked there. So a fantastic campaigning initiative from DJT, and we've got to enjoy these moments, Nate. There's only 1 week to go, and all this campaigning uh, is we've got to cherish it. We have to enjoy this last week of campaigning from one of the best to ever do it. Plain and simple, he is a campaigning machine. The energy on the guy is crazy. The volume of rallies and appearances and let's get onto that. So clearly, the big ticket item was the Joe Rogan appearance this week, which, by the way, it appears Google have tried to censor. Which, God, I won't. I won't get into the darkness again. But yeah, I listened to the whole 3 hours with my wonderful girlfriend Amelia, and our takeaway, or certainly my takeaway, I won't speak for her, but my takeaway was that it really normalized Trump to the masses, as in they got to see a real person who is unashamedly authentic and himself, and they got to just see that guy chew the fat for 3 hours and just be a normal dude. And yeah, he's got his convictions, and he clearly believes what he's saying, and that's the whole. I think that's the whole allure of Trump. That's the reason he's so appealing to so many people, and hopefully he attracted more people to his base because he's a person that is genuine, and he genuinely thinks what he thinks, and he is a real person, unlike the likes of a Kamala, who nobody has the faintest clue who she really is. She's a complete political robot. So I think and Rogan and his colleagues said as much in the aftermath, and you should watch that 15-minute clip. But Nath, what were your thoughts on the Rogan pod?
Yeah, I agree, and I'm trying to pull it up now to get the total views, because it's surging towards the all-time record, which I believe is held by Bob Lazar.
I think it was 40. It was close to 40 million on YouTube at the time of this recording. I don't know what the Spotify numbers are like.
Yeah, it's 40. But as you said as well, I tried to put in Joe Rogan and Trump and it didn't come up, so they are censoring it. But I found it. 38 mil, which is just astonishing after 3 days. It'll easily get to the record, I'd say, which is it's just amazing. And you're right. It humanized him. It was much better, and that's the beauty of Joe, I think. Joe's he's very good at keeping it conversational and human. Because Trumpy, he goes off on tangents, mate. Once he gets rambling, he'll just ramble.
It's called the weave. It's
Yeah.
called the weave.
But Joe's like, Joe's not afraid, right? He'll literally go, mate, whoa, come on, let's just need to keep it here. And I thought that was good because he extracted a lot out of him. And one of my favorite parts of that conversation, I actually personally haven't had the time to finish it. I'm about halfway through, but my favorite part was when he was talking about the tariffs and how one of the presidents, I can't remember his name, but was called the Tariff King. And this was before the US Federal Reserve was established in 1912, I believe. This was before 1912. Back then, believe it or not, Jacko, I'm not sure if you know this or not, there was no income tax. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Yes. And arguably, during that period, citizens lived very prosperous lives. You didn't have to pay the government for the money, the hard-earned money that you earned. And not saying that that's a terrible thing, but when you spend it the way they spend it, it is a terrible thing. So it was very cool to see him talk about some of the ways that the US used to be run before the Federal Reserve came in and they started printing money and et cetera, et cetera. Now, will he go off and eliminate income tax? That's a big stretch, but they entertained the thought, and I like the fact that he was talking. His rhetoric is so about the people, which is just so refreshing. You know, you can tell the guy, we've always known he's not doing it for himself. Like, he's losing money doing it. He doesn't even take a salary. We didn't take a salary when he was first president. So, yeah, I loved the human element. I loved him talking about Joe extracting. I'd say that for Joe extracting tangible and insightful policy stances and actionable things out of Trump, which often get lost in the rigmarole of his normal speeches. You don't actually ever get to the substance.
Yeah.
So I really loved that we could actually see some substance in that chat. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I haven't finished it yet, but yeah, thus far I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's a good assessment, and full credit. I agree to Rogan, who did laser in. Most interviewers, well, apart from the likes of the far left media, who literally interrogate him and debate him rather than interview him. Rogan just lasered in really well on getting an answer to the direct questions he asked, and it was a really healthy discussion. It was so positive. It was a really good chat. And I personally don't believe Kamala would be capable of replicating anything like that because she's terrified, I think, seemingly of displaying any sort of personality because that's not how political operators work. They don't reveal themselves, and that's why Trump's such a he's such a maverick. And by the way, JD Vance, who is a similar, normal person, I think, to Trump, and that very authentic and real kind of guy, he's appearing on Rogan tomorrow, which I also think is a great move by the campaign. And I look forward to that very much. Vance is an impressive man. He's extremely bright. So that'll be a nice 3 hours of my Thursday evening, Natho.
Yeah, and that'll be a cool story because I'm sure Rogan actually just wants to. See, that's the thing. He just, well, maybe not with Trumpy, but with someone like JD Vance, he probably just wants to fucking hear the story. The movie, what was it called? The movie again?
Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah, unbelievable watch. I mean, I loved it, and he truly is a salt of the earth, patriot, loves his country, hardworking, came from absolutely nothing. JD Vance, and this is. These are the types of people that need to run that country. I think it's a good combo. You got RFK there as well. This is. There's so many promising aspects to the team they've assembled. It's like the Avengers
Yeah,
It's literally like the
Musk
Avengers.
on the front line
Oh,
as
you got
well.
Muskie, of course. How could you forget? It's just, and how funny is he at the rallies?
Oh, mate, I love it. I love it.
He's so heavily autistic, but God, he's funny. And you can tell he's just loving it. He's like a
He
kid.
is.
He's like a kid in a candy shop, going, "This is amazing." He's awesome. Yeah, you've got to hold so much hope that these guys are just going to get it right.
Well, let's get the election win done first, mate. Let's see what happens. As we've both said, the Democrats are capable of anything, including a miraculous come from behind victory. So let's not count our chickens just yet, old boy, and let's get into, if you're ready, Tampon Tim. You're very lucky. We're not going to get into your girlfriend from your Chinese trips back in the day. We'll leave that one for another time. Actually, we probably will never mention your name again if you guys lose, because
no,
I'm not that interested.
Not worth the breath.
No, but Nathan, let's get into some sipping. If you're ready to sip.
Yeah, or do you want to do that at the end, or do you want to do market? What do you want to do?
Oh, let's do markets. Let's cover markets.
I liked ending with the sippies. That was good.
First DM to tell us whether we should go saucy sips before markets or vice versa. We'll stick to that. So get in there. Sling us a DM.
So markets sponsored proudly by my company Cashew, as always, killing it the last 3 years with our picks. We'll flash that on screen now. Get the stock pack 70% off for the next 48 hours. Link is in the description. Covered a great story this week for Saga Metals Corporation, who have an exciting chunk of land up in Canada and uranium prospecting. Very likely they've got some good reserves there, which is awesome. And I did a bit of a deep dive into the sort of macro environment around uranium this week, which I found really interesting. And we talk a lot about our staples, Saucy, our staples being your utility crypto, Bitcoin in this next cycle. We talk about defense stocks. We talk about cybersecurity. We've talked about a few different things, but I can confidently say now that I've got my head around uranium. I've always understood the utility, obviously, much cleaner energy, very efficient, really just absolutely shits on wind and solar. But there's always been the ethical considerations. But what I found very funny and enjoyable to read up on this week is how in the background your Googles, your Amazons, your Microsofts, your loud and proud beating chest eco warriors are finally coming to the table with nuclear, despite the environmental repercussions, to fuel their AI needs by 2030, building their own little power plants and what are they called? Semi-modular reactors. So I did a good dive into that space, and uranium prices have sort of just stalled the last few years, even though their demand is growing and their utility is undeniable. Its utility is undeniable. And now I think as a listener, if you're investing like we are, you've really got to start to consider uranium as a good play over the next 5 to 10 years. It's the trend's not going to change. And now that you've seen the big boys fold, even under their rigid climate conscious guidelines, you need to then go, okay, this is serious. So have a look at some of the big ETFs. If you're still a bit tentative, go look at their growth. Very impressive growth. Of course, Saga Metals, very exciting new prospect that's just IPO'd on the Canadian Stock Exchange, whom I did a very insightful piece on this week. And yeah, I strongly urge you have a look at that. So my assessment on little addition to the normal staples this week. Source would be getting the viewers to have a look into that. What about you, mate? What have you been eyeing off this last week in the markets?
Nathan, I want to talk Brent crude oil price.
Wow. Hit me.
The riveting topic of Brent crude oil. So we've talked a lot about kind of the Trump trades. You talked 80-20 chances, factoring in a Trump presidency to investment decisions, which the whole world should, anyone who is investing should be thinking about at the moment. And on that note, I believe strongly in Trump's foreign diplomacy strength. I think his track record is brilliant, and I think he is a get things done kind of operator, and fundamentally pro-peace.
Yes.
So with that said, Natho, now maybe this is naive and too optimistic, but I actually do think there is a substantial chance that Trump ends the conflicts in the Middle East quite quickly. I think he could actually end that certainly within a year of his presidency. I don't think that's out of the realms of possibilities at all. In fact, I would back him to do so. And Russia-Ukraine, I could see him ending even quicker than that, if I had to speculate loosely. So if both of those events occur, one, Trump should win a Nobel Peace Prize.
Should have won that last time, mate.
Agreed. Two, the price of Brent crude oil, in theory, should lower because, Nath, the reason oil prices are higher is because supply chains have been affected through the conflicts. Plain and simple, operations have had to cease or pause because there's the risk of war, overlapping with sites and production and so forth. So I could see supply increasing significantly because we're talking about several zones that are large in oil production. So I could see supply increasing, obviously lowering the price of Brent crude oil. So that's my kind of out of the box take. And I want to talk.
What does it do for stock prices, though?
Well, you can bet on Brent crude oil, and you can also bet on several stocks that have a seriously strong correlation with oil price.
Right.
So if you investigate the stocks that will be impacted, or an ETF, I'm sure there is an ETF that you could get exposure to. But yeah, I'd be looking at a direct, I'd be looking at a direct short of the oil price. But Nath, I think that's a pretty quirky one, and certainly do your own research.
Well, you're actually a short option, taking out a short option on certain. Yeah, interesting.
Well, fundamentally, I think the price of oil will reduce significantly, basically back to the level or close to the level, the pre-war level. And I don't actually know the number it's gone up, but I believe it. I believe it's 50% plus. So I think that's a good play.
It's affected
and that's
different
just
regions differently as well. Europe's
for sure. For sure,
it's way more expensive in parts of Europe than it is here, and it's proportionally different. But yeah, it's definitely gone.
It's one to look at, and I've probably brought it up a little too soon. I'm not.
No, I love it.
Yeah, I'm not as well versed as I'd like to be, but it's just an instinctual gut pick. And then, Natho, I do want to talk record Bitcoin price because it's either hit or about to hit, maybe a new all-time high. And I think that's the market factoring in potential Trump presidency. He announced that he'll get rid of the chair, I think, of the SEC,
Gary Gensler, an absolute awful bloke.
Yeah, he looks like a pretty scary character. So I think that's a very positive vibe for the crypto fiends out there, and the Bitcoin holders and utility crypto holders. So yeah, Nathan, I think the Bitcoin holders will be pretty happy. And I just think there's a few operators out there that there's a few operators out there that are quickly making plays based on the results of the election, and I think that's a great way to invest. I think you can more comfortably invest, and you won't lose if Kamala pulls a rabbit out of the hat and wins. You'll have time to react and cut your losses pretty quickly. You may not even be down. That's the beauty of slowly factoring in a kind of future forecast. So anyway, they're my two main statements, big fella.
Yeah, important to always reiterate that point. This is cross-party support for more crypto regulations or leveling the playing field and easing the crypto landscape, or ridding the crypto landscape of lack of clarity, and making it easier for investors to get into the markets. And I think that's it doesn't really matter who gets in long term. Short term, definitely. And we all know who we'd prefer to get in. So, yeah, I echo those sentiments. It is all-time high. I was just checking then at the moment.
Nice.
Yeah, she's cracked it, which is
well done to the Bitcoin maxis.
Which bodes well. The only thing is that it's heavily now, like, so much of it is owned by China,
BlackRock
and it's going to be manipulated, and there will be a rug pull event pretty soon. Not pretty soon, but in the midterm. But she'll go. She's going to go. It'll pop. I don't know how high it'll go, but it'll pop. And it's exciting. It's cool to see this. It'll be very cool to see this thing rip. But a few hurdles still to get over.
Indeed. I mean, as always, not financial advice, just purely two blokes talking about what they're thinking on all things investing and market. But Nathan, are you satisfied with that market update and ready to sip, or do you want to keep going with a few of your picks?
I will. Yeah, well, no, I'll quickly mention that it may be important to mention this, that the annual BRICS summit was last week. A few takeaways from there is they launched their BRICS Pay system, commodity-backed currency there within the BRICS nations, their currencies-backed system for instant payments between those countries with their little... It's got their they haven't disclosed exactly what the trust layer is. I have my suspicions. I think it'll be XRP as the trust layer, but they've got their own systems that they've built to make sure that the transactions between those countries is super quick, which is really exciting to see. That conglomerate of countries, that they've been working towards this for the best part of 10 years, and it's really interesting to see how the US has lagged behind in this regard for a long time, and I think a Trump win changes that. I think they're going to accelerate very quickly. We've seen him launch his Liberty Fund, and we need to get on the wavelength of them, because they're leading the way, and this is what global trade should look like: moving currencies, moving assets. It should all be instant. You can teleport gold if need be via a token like that. And this is where we're at. The BRICS have really came out with a powerhouse summit last week. You wouldn't have seen much coverage on it unless you look at the stuff I look at, but super cool what they've set up. And I promise you, next year is going to be like going through a time warp. If Trumpy gets in, he's going to want to catch up to those big boys, because they're really in place now and at the forefront of completely revolutionizing this financial system that we find ourselves in. And if not, you get left behind. Simple as that. Because their US dollar is collapsing. The gold reserves over in those countries are through the roof. They don't have as much as the US, but they're catching up, and they're structuring themselves and pivoting themselves into a position where they won't have to be reliant on the US dollar anymore as the global reserve currency. And something very interesting, fun fact for listeners, is that global reserve currencies, you look through history, typically only have a lifespan of around 100 years, and the US dollar came in around 100 years ago. So I still firmly believe the US dollar is going to implode, and we're going to see a new system come through. But I think that'll be good, ultimately. I'm not saying that's going to be bad. It'll be a more universal system because we live in look, whether you like it or not, we live in a completely global economy now. And I think that's going to be reflected over the next couple of years. But I think things will really, really accelerate next year. So that'll be my sentiment. If you haven't checked it out and you're interested in seeing where this system's moving towards, I do urge you to go watch some highlights from the BRICS Summit, because not only does it give you a good sense of where things external to the US are heading, because look, the world isn't just all about the US. It's very much about the other big boys and big players. So get your head around what they're doing, because that often is indicative of where ultimately the money's flowing. So that'd be my final input on the markets, big fella. And I'm ready to sip my salted lemon water.
Very well said, Natho. That is the markets update brought to you by the Cashew app, giving you the best stock packs full of undervalued stock picks from an incredible algorithm that beats the S&P. So, Natho, let's get on to Saucy's Sips. And this week, again, there's always a theme. But the theme is, for lack of a better term, conservative warriors this week. And so for anyone that is unaware of the rules of the game, I'm going to give Nath 3 or 4 people, and he has to decide whether he would have a drink at the bar with said people. And then once they're all on a table together, if there's anyone on that table, Nath has to decide what he'd get for everyone to drink. And a bit of dialogue follows. So, Nath, are you ready?
Go for it, man.
The first name, unsurprisingly perhaps, is your new friend, Candace Owens. Would you get a drink with Candace, having now spent 20 minutes with her?
100%, mate. Definitely. Would be lovely to get to know her more. I think we're very, very similar people. Our thoughts are very similar. I mean, she was saying, you'll know more than anyone. The stuff that she said in some of the answers was pretty much the rhetoric that I spit to you. It was verbatim. She used so many words that I use. So, yeah, absolutely.
I could see that being a fantastic session, actually. You guys at the bar. Now, another name that's quite heavily linked with Candace Owens, not for all the right reasons, Ben Shapiro. Would you get a drink with Ben at the bar?
I don't think he drinks, and no, he wouldn't make the list, mate. I'm not a fan of Big Benny. Or Little Benny, I should say.
The drive-by as well. Not only did Ben cop a rejection, but he's copped a sneaky little drive-by.
No chance.
Hugely controversial. All right, well, let's move on to a Canadian man by the name of Jordan Peterson.
Yes, yeah, he'd be at the table. He's
thank God for that.
Somewhat of an inspiration there for a while. Yeah, he definitely would make the cut. Yeah,
very good. And we'll round out the group, Nath. There was news today, a topical name, and I'm sure you'd be somewhat familiar with this figure. He was released from prison today. He calls himself, and many would agree, that he's a political prisoner. He refused to. Anyway, the court sent him to jail, and there's rumors that Pelosi was heavily involved. Steve Bannon. Do you know Steve?
Steve Bannon. The name sounds very familiar.
Political advisor to Trump. He's a very well-known figure, and you'll hear a lot of him in this last week of the election, because he's fresh out of jail and ready to deliver some truth bombs.
Interesting. So he's 4 months in prison. I don't know the bloke, mate. But
well, let's substitute him then with a friend of his, I believe. another guy you've spent a little bit of time with.
Oh no, I think I know this bloke.
Oh, you know him?
Did he?
You
What
would know
show
him. You
did he
would know
used to
him.
run?
The War Room. You'd know him.
Yeah, Steve Bannon, 100%.
Yeah.
He was huge during the. I was watching him heaps in 2020.
Yeah.
He ran the War Room. He's kind of similar to Jonesy.
And he stopped running the War Room because he was shipped out to jail.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, I definitely chucked him 100%. He kind of
all right, Nathan.
He just disappeared. What happened to him?
He
Jail.
went. It's what happens when you go to jail, you know.
Yeah, but he's only in there for 4 months, mate. So he's obviously.
Yeah, I think he was under serious suppression orders and
So he got
silenced.
he got censored out the wazoo.
Oh yeah, there's censorship and then there's Steve Bannon. Suppression. But Nathan, so let's finish off this fun little segment. So you're at the bar, and you now have to buy drinks for not the richest table we've had, but still a bit of wealth there and a lot of power. But you have to buy drinks for Candace Owens, Steve Bannon, and Jordan Peterson. What are you getting each of those characters, and what are you getting yourself?
Candy would probably want, like, again, I don't know, I'd get some nice, maybe a nice cocktail of sorts. I'd leave that one to the bartender. Let them
What's your best cocktail?
Well, know what they think would be appropriate. I'm always kind of a fan of that. I like seeing what the place thinks is their best, their experimental best.
Forking out for Candace, Nathan.
We definitely try to impress on that front. And then Jordan Peterson, again, I don't think he drinks, but he wouldn't want, if he did drink, from interviews I've listened to, he'd do something straight. It'd either be on the rocks or, so I might just get a really, really nice glass of scotch on the rocks.
Yeah.
And then I reckon, Stevie Bannon would need. I'd probably have to get him a bottle of JD, I reckon. He'd need a bottle straight away. He needs to just, yeah.
He's built up a bit of a thirst inside those four walls, maybe.
He would, yeah. I'd get him a bottle, and then I'd probably just sit there with him and smash it. JD and Cokes.
Yeah, very good, very good. And I reckon all three of them they'd clearly have a good chat, I reckon.
They would.
Peterson would moderate that chat really well, by the way, because I could see between you, Bannon, and Owens, I could see not spiraling. That's an insulting term, but I could see some pretty aggressive chat being thrown around, and I think Peterson would just guide it beautifully. It'd say, "Oh, come on, guys, let's think meticulously about." I could just see that being a fantastic setup. Anyway, hopefully one day you get that opportunity, mate.
Yeah, it's a good group. Another good group.
Yeah,
love it. Love it. No, it's fun. That would be a fun table. Maybe not as entertaining as last week's group, but still good.
No, not as violent as last week's group.
Let's go.
And Nathan, just to round out, I just want to remind anyone that's listening to this to go watch your interview with Candace Owens, which will be live.
It's live now.
Live now on YouTube. Username Cashew HQ. And that'll be at the top of the page, I think, pinned to the top. So there'll be plenty of prompts on Nathan's Instagram at Cashew Nate. Go follow the little podcast Insta we've got up and running called The Red Hot Show. And follow the Cashew HQ on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Like and subscribe and whatever people bloody do to get more views. It's an absolute pleasure doing this, Nathan. I'm really enjoying having this opportunity to just, express myself in a public forum and to do it alongside you, who, again, I think you're inspiring a lot of people to speak up, express themselves and think more critically. So it's great what you're doing. And as a good mate of mine, I love I love being a part of it in a very small way, doing this fun thing with you, my friend. So thanks to those that listen.